going. All righty. Let's test it out. Let's see what it sounds like. Minimize this. All right. So this evening, gonna do some coding from the docs in Nextjs. So what I have is an open directory on my desktop, and it is inside of VS Code, which is the text editor that I'll be using to make this project. And to kick it off, we'll just create a Next.js app per the command or suggestion here. So inside of the terminal, a little bit, I'll just paste this in, space then a dot. Say yes to TypeScript. Say yes to pretty much everything except the SRC and the turbo pack and the import alias. Pretty much just keeping the defaults for the most part. It is still going. This is an older computer that I'm using, so it may take a little more time than my other computer that I normally use, but we'll hang in there with it. It will eventually get the job done. It should be a little faster after the initial install. Okay, and let's type clear. So what I want to do now is, I don't think we'll have any issues, but just to make sure we don't have any compatibility issues with the latest version of Next and React and some of the packages that we want to use, I'm going to add a package manager. And I have this in my GitHub repo, and I'm going to be sure to include the link to the GitHub to whatever we finalize in this video in the description below. Add some, a, I'm going to specify the package manager and also do a little bit of overriding so that I won't have any issues with, why is this thing taking so long? Any issues with the npm packages that I want to use. But while it is loading, I can go ahead and install mongoose, because we're going to use mongodb as the database, and we'll use mongoose to interact with it. And I'm just going to go to repos. And just come here, a few little projects I'm working on. And I'm just going to copy this code, and we can close this out. And I'll paste it in here, and that takes care of that. And mongoose is done. So we can go ahead and close out the package.json. Then open up a browser and go to mongodb. We'll go to the mongodb.com. And it is absolutely free to sign up and create an account. You'll just click on try for free, but I already have an account, of course, and I'll just click on sign in. And once you're signed in, you'll need to create a project. Typically with the free tier, you only get 4, but as you can see, I already have 4. So I'm just going to delete this one. I don't remember what I was using it for. Okay, I don't even have a cluster built, so that's okay. So we'll just go to view all projects. And we can see that this project does not have a cluster, so it gives me the option to delete, so I'll just delete it. And we'll delete the project. And then we'll need to create a cluster. And in order to do so, we'll need to start by creating a project. I'm just going to name this Live Next CRUD and click Next. Then we'll need to create a project. I'm going to only give access permissions to myself and then click create project. But if you needed to add additional people to the project and give permissions, you could do so here. Now we're being redirected to creating a cluster. So I'll click on the plus mark. And of course, I'm going to be using the free tier. And I'm going to keep AWS as the provider. I'm not going to worry about changing the name. This is the region that is closest to me, so I'm going to keep the default. No need to add any tags for this project. So with that, we won't worry about any advanced configuration. Then we'll click development. And so in order to create the cluster, we'll need to have a connection string that is going to be within our Next.js project. The connection string will need a username and password. For this project, I'm just going to keep the default password, but I would recommend you create something unique if you were looking to deploy and use this project or any project for that matter in production. So I'm just going to click copy, and then I'm going to click create database user. This typically takes a few minutes to create, so then we'll just choose a connection method. We'll need the drivers. And while it's provisioning, I'm going to go back to VS Code and in the root directory, add a file named .env and then paste in the password for the connection string that we are, for the connection cluster, excuse me, that we're setting up. So while we're still waiting on the cluster to be provisioned, let's go ahead and add the function to connect to the database. So in the root directory, create a folder named lib. And inside of it, let's add a file named db.ts. So with this, we want to have a function that's going to create a connection to MongoDB. Excuse me. So we'll just create a simple function. I won't worry about the documentation for this one. So we'll start by importing mongoose from mongoose. And then we'll create a const named connectdb. Say that, and it will be an asynchronous function. And I'll go ahead and export default the connection DB. That way we'll have the ability to use it outside of this file. And I typically forget to export it, so it's good to do it soon. And then inside of the function, we'll add await. And what we want to await is the connection to mongoose. So we'll say mongoose.connect. Okay, and inside of Connect, sorry about that. It's my little guy coming downstairs before I get ready for bed. Inside of Connect, we want to use the environment variable that's going to be stored within the .env file. And the name of this variable is going to be mongo underscore URI. And we'll add a exclamation mark at the end of it for type safety. And to make sure that I don't create any errors in connecting to this URL, let's go ahead and copy it. And inside of the .env file, we'll paste it in. And what we're going to set it equal to will be the connection string from the MongoDB cluster. And it is still provisioning. It doesn't appear to be ready just yet. And that's fine. So we'll just go back to our db.ts where we're storing the function that's going to connect to MongoDB. And we'll say console.log connected to MongoDB. I'll just add a little smiley face at the end. Oh, and I probably should have wrapped this in a try-catch block. Sorry. So I'll just copy it, paste it in. And inside of the catch portion, we'll say console.log. We'll say error. Error. And then we'll process.exit. And the status code for it'll be 1. And as long as we didn't make any errors with this, basically what's happening is we're going to have the ability to establish a connection between, actually, I don't want to do any. There we go. We want to establish a connection between our Nextjs app and our MongoDB cluster. This is the function that is going to allow us to do so. We're using mongoose and the connection string username and password from MongoDB to establish an asynchronous function that's named connectDB. And as long as everything is set up correctly, that's all that we'll need to connect to the database. And we'll go back to, okay, great. Now it is ready. And it appears that it's actually showing the password this time. Typically it doesn't. So we'll just go ahead and copy this connection string, click done, and paste it into the .env file. We can remove the password because it's already stored. So we'll just click save and close out this file. And we actually can close out the db.ts file as well. So the next thing I want to do is establish or create or organize my data within the database. And we use a model in order to do so. For this project, because we're just using the documentation and we're not going to look to do anything too elaborate, if you will, we'll just create a simple model name note, and we'll just add, actually, you know what? We'll just create a simple little, a little note. Yeah, we'll just create a little note app. So we'll add a folder named models. And within models, we'll add a file. Let's name this file. Let's make it note.ts. And inside of this file is where we're going to store the model that's going to allow us to structure our data within the database. This is just going to be a note app today, so it won't be anything too elaborate. Actually, I don't think I want to make a note app. I think we'll make a client, and we'll name the model client.ts. And first we'll start by importing mongoose. And from mongoose, we want to grab a couple of things. First, we want to grab schema. And we also want to grab the document. Then we'll want to create a interface that's going to allow us to ensure type safety. And we'll say extends document. Inside of the document, this is where we want to store the types for the fields that we will use to create a model. And I think what we'll have is a name as a string. Then we'll also have a status. We'll make this paid or unpaid. So that way we can only make a selection between the two, and we'll have a fee and assign it to number. And I think this will be enough for the application. We don't need anything else. Now we'll need to create a schema that's going to allow us to interact with the database using Mongoose, and it'll help us, well, and we'll use this to structure the data that we're getting from our front end. So let's create a const named client schema and set it equal to new schema. We'll pass in the iClient. Let me go ahead and create an export const named client, and we're going to set it equal to models. No, mongoose, I'm sorry. It helps if I bring it in correctly. I guess it would have technically worked, but I'd rather just keep it semantically correct. We'll say mongoose.models. And this is basically saying if there is a model named client already created, we want to check it first. And if there isn't one, then we want to create one. Otherwise, we want to check and see if there's one already created. That way, we're not just creating a bunch of models within the database, a bunch of client models within the database every time we make a connection to the server, from the server, excuse me. All right, now within the client schema, we'll create a field name and give it a type of string, and we'll go required true. This is just to make sure that we are passing this field. Then after name, let's add status. And for this, it'll be a type of string. And then we want to use enum, which is kind of like, which is giving you options to pick from. And we want paid or unpaid. We'll set the default to unpaid. And last but not least, we want fee. And this will be a type of number, and we'll make it required. Okay. So this is the model named client that's going to allow us to interact and organize with the data within our MongoDB database that we get from our front end Nextjs app, or the front end portion of the Nextjs app. Okay, now I think the next thing I want to do is go ahead and clean up my front end just a bit. So within the page.js, let's move this div and add a new div named home, with a new div, and within it pass in homepage, and we can delete this image, and we'll close out the model. We don't need that anymore. And within the global.css, just going to remove the boiler CSS code, and I think I want to style this a little differently. Well, not differently, but just add some default styling. So we'll say HTML, body, and reach. And we'll set the height to 100%. And I'll also want the Font size set to small. I think that'll do it. All right, let's go ahead and start the server just to make sure everything is working properly. So in the terminal, we'll type in npm run dev and press enter. All right, it should be ready now. So we'll go to browser and go to localhost 3000. Okay. And as you can see, we have our home page, and at 100%, I think the text is smaller. Let me just make sure that it is working. I'm gonna set the color to, yep. All right, cool. So I'm not gonna worry too much about styling just yet. Ultimately, what I want to do is have the ability to interact with the database. And in this project, we're using MongoDB. And the way we're going to interact with it is directly from the documentation. Now, there's always more than one way to skin a cat, if you will. So you don't necessarily have to follow this approach. I'm just going to follow the latest approach, or suggested approach, I should say, by Nextjs according to the docs. Feel free to make any modifications to fit your own desired needs, if you will. But with that said, excuse me, go to the getting started guide and go to data fetching, server actions and mutations. And so this is passing the action directly within the page. But I am going to take this approach by creating a separate file to separate out my actions. So within lib, I'm gonna add a file named actions.ts. And at the top, we'll name it, we'll add use server as suggested. And we'll add this exactly, we just copy this directly, paste it in, and of course the function, we'll need to add that logic, but we'll see what the doc suggests. Also want to add a button, it appears, to create. And let me see if we can pass the action as a prop. Also pass a server action to a client component. Yep. Okay. Nextjs TypeScript plugin will flag up the action. Yep, since it is a function which generally cannot be serialized across client. Yep. Props named actions or ended with the action are assumed to receive server actions. This is only since the TypeScript plugin doesn't actually know if it receives a server action or ordinary function. Yep. Excuse me. Samples. Hold on. Evoke by action attribute in the form element. Yep, server action support progressive enhancements by default, meaning the form will be submitted even if JavaScript hasn't loaded yet. Nice. Okay. So that should care for just about any browser that you may get, just in case someone has an older browser or they have their JavaScript accidentally disabled, you can still invoke the action. So that's good. Client components forms. Yep. Prioritizing client hydration. Form, okay. And Nextjs caching, validate architecture. Action is revoked. Nextjs can return both the updated UI and new data in a single server round trip, okay. Scenes, server actions, yep. Since this means they can be reused anywhere. Yep. Okay. Here's an example. This is an HTML form element to allow servers to be invoked within the action prop. Okay. Yep. So we actually could copy this code exactly how it is, create inputs for customer ID, amount, and status. And we may just do that. Let me see what else is in the docs. We could pass it additional arguments to the server using JavaScript. Oh, so we could, I guess I could do, this is the server approach. This is the client component approach. So I may just do that. May use both methods. And then within it, you could pass in, if you were looking to update the user, okay? Pass in the ID and the form action, or the form data, excuse me, that you're getting from this form, okay? Cool. Programmatic form submission. Trigger form submission format by using the request submit. Client export entry. Okay. Server-side validation. Okay. Suggested to use Zod, which we can certainly do so, or will do so. All right. Okay. And then we'll do the validated fields and get the fields, okay? And then of course with the action, previous state. So where is it? Create a user. Okay. And you can pass your action to the use form state hook and use the return state to display error message. Okay. Use that to return the error message. Okay. Looks good. Good to know. Pending states. Okay. Okay. And yeah. And then we can do the optimistic updates. Well, that's not necessary for this, but I guess why not? Okay. And revalidating the data, create the post. Okay. All right. So nothing too complicated or anything that we couldn't do. Yeah, off. Yep, you can check if there's no user, you can redirect. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and jump in and get started. So I think where I want to start first is, what do they suggest for data fetching? So this is using an API or using fetch, excuse me, fetching data on the server with the ORM component. All right. So since we're using mongoose and mongodb, I think what we'll do is go ahead and just create a function within the main page and display a message to the user. If there are no posts or clients, we'll provide a message. Otherwise, we'll see the client's information on screen. Mm-mm-mm-mm. So let's mark this export default async. And I think we'll go, what did it say do? Stand on the server. Const await and then run the function to get. So we'll say, actually, let's do this. Let's go to lib, create a file named data.ts, and you need to create a function to run on the server and connect to the database to get all clients. So I think we'll start by marking this as a server file because we may use the client and server approach. I don't know, we'll see. So we'll go start by importing the connection or importing the function that's going to allow us to connect to the MongoDB database. And remember, we named that function connect to DB. Then we'll create an export const get all clients and make it equal to async. We're not passing anything into it. So within the function, we'll add a try catch block. And within it, we'll start by connect to DB. Now we'll need to run a function to get all of the clients from the database. So we'll create a const named clients and set it equal to await client dot find. Actually, I think it's dot client. And I'm sorry, the client is coming from the model, and this is what we're going to use to query the database. And I think it is find, not one. I think it is find. And then we can just pass in the array, and then we'll go dot lean. And this is going to allow us to strip the mongoose methods. Finally, we'll need to return this to the browser so we can work with it. Well, I guess we don't technically have to, but just to keep it simple, I'm gonna go return json.parse, and we want to json.stringify. We'll be stringifying the clients that we get back from database. If we get an error, we'll say console.log error. And throw new error, failed to fetch clients. Click save. Okay, so we want to use this function to make a connection to MongoDB, which is going to be starting out, or which is established with this function. Then we want to create a variable and set it equal to await. And we want to use the model that we created to find. And we're using the .lean method to strip the methods. And we basically want to find all the clients and stringify the data as we return it to the browser. If we get an error, we'll be sure to log it to the console. Okay. So now within the page.js, we want to use this to get all of the data from the database. So we'll create a const named client data and set it equal to await. And we want to get the function that we just created, which is get all clients, and be sure to call it. Now to see if this is working, I think I can go console.log client data. Too many spaces. Let me refresh this. And it is empty. So we also see that we're connected to MongoDB. So that's great. So let's see or confirm if the model is showing up in the database as well. So we'll go back to MongoDB. And we'll go to clusters under database, browse collections, and we see clients. Perfect. And if I go to insert document, we have the ability to insert a client into the database if we wanted to. Perfect. So what we'll do is I want to show a message in the event there are no clients. And then once we create a client, we should have the ability to display it on screen. So we'll say underneath, say if client data dot length is equal to 0. We want to return a p tag, no client data. Actually, we'll say no clients found. Add a client today. Click save. Okay, so we see that it is working because we now see that it is not any data in the database. So we have the ability to add our first client. So now we just need to provide the user with the ability to add a client. So I think at this point, I'm going to do a little bit of styling just to give a little bit of life to the screen. I know some of you dislike the unstyled projects, if you will, but I'm not going to do anything too elaborate. So we will keep it fairly simple. So what I want to show is maybe some cards on the screen that basically represent some data from the database. So within the return statement div, we'll add a class name and we'll set the margin to auto, and we'll make the max width of the screen large. Give a little bit of padding on the X of 2, on the Y of 4, We'll set the width to full. And then I'll add home page back. And what we should see, but we won't see. I tell you what, I'm gonna comment this out for right now. Hit save. You see that now the home page is indented because we set the max width of the screen and we also set the margin. So just to distinguish it or to show it a little better, we'll give it a background color of purple, 400. And you see here is the background. So we'll say give it a height of full. There we go. So now we have a full screen purple background. Actually, I want to keep this. We'll go border. Yeah, that's fine. And instead of this div, let's add a new div with a welcome to client tracker. Save. Okay. Give it a class name of text to Excel. Font will be semi-bold. Margin bottom of 4. And that should be enough. Okay. And here we have the client tracker. Now, like I mentioned, I want some cards just to show some quick client data on screen. In the event we had clients, how many clients we have, maybe how many. Let's look at this. How many clients we have, the status of how many are paid, how many are unpaid, and maybe how many fees we've collected. Something like that. I'll close that out. So we'll need to create some functions in order to have that ability. So I think we'll store here within the lib directory. Let's add a file name. What do we want to name this? Let's go with total clients or client data. Client data.ts. At the top of the file, we'll mark it as use server. We'll need to import connectdb. And we'll also need to bring in the client model. Create a export const name client data, and we'll make it async. Yep, add a try catch block. And we'll go await connectdb. Now we need a way to aggregate the data from the database. And with MongoDB documents, we have the ability to get counts. This is the way that we'll go about getting counts from the documents within the database. So let's create a constant. You can name it whatever you want, but I'm gonna name it result. And we'll say await. Here we want to use the client model. And we'll go aggregate. And this is going to be an array. Okay, so I say, why is it throwing an error? And we'll say group, $group. we'll go underscore ID is equal to null. We'll say total clients, total TOTAL clients is $, sum one. And we'll also hold on, sum one. I think I need wait a minute. $ sum one. Yep, that's it. What was I doing? And then we'll go total paid. PID. And we'll go brackets. Sum is going to be equal to $COD, COND, and we'll go in an empty array. In it, well, $EQ. What we want to grab is the status, $status, and we'll go with paid. And we'll go quotations, $fee. And it's going to be 0. Make sure that looks good. All I'm basically doing with this is grabbing the data or the document from MongoDB and doing a little bit of manipulation to get the sum and to have the ability to display this in cards on the home screen. So we'll go with total unpaid since we have a paid, and we'll go sum. We want $COD. And $EQ, status, TUS. Uh-oh. Sorry, keep that consistent. And we'll go unpaid. I'm trying to think. This one, nope, a lot more. Is $fee. Give me a, okay, there it is. I think that looks good. And then the last one, just the ability to see what's unpaid. Yep. And then we'll go Q. Okay. Outside of that, we'll go with 1 and 0. A little space there. And this should, I think this should be on all of these. $status, $status. Yeah, I just left it off the last one. All right. So that looks good. And then outside of it, what we want to do is if the results, dot length is equal to 0. What we want to do is we want to return default data for this information. So we'll say total clients. If there aren't any, we just want to show 0. We'll say total paid is equal to 0. Total unpaid is equal to 0. Unpaid period is equal to 0. Okay, that looks good. Great. Now we want to destructure the results that we get back. So we'll say const curly braces, and then we'll say equal results. And we want to grab the first item in the array. That's not return, that's results, sorry. And this is coming from this result. And what we want to destructure is total clients, total paid, total unpaid, and 1, 2, 3, and then unpaid. I probably should have made this uppercase, but it's okay. And then finally, outside of this const, we want to return total clients, total paid, total unpaid, and unpaid. And then, of course, if we get an error, I'll console.log error. We'll say throw move error failed to fetch clients. Okay, we'll hit save. I don't think I made any typos here, but we'll come back to it if I did. Close out this action file, this global CSS. I think I'm good on this as well too. But what I do want to do, I'm gonna keep that data open just in case I made an error. But what I do want to do is go ahead and create some cards that are going to display this data from the database. So underneath the client tracker div, I'm going to add a new div and give it a class name of grid calls to. And that means that we want 2 columns by default on large devices. I want grid calls 4. And we'll give this a gap of 4 for right now. Then this, what I want to do is maybe create a little reusable stat card component that will give me the ability to display the stat data, maybe a title, the quantity, and maybe a color. So let's go ahead and create our very first reusable component. So within the root directory, let's add a folder named components. And within components, let's add a, let's, let's create a folder. Let's just keep it pretty structured. Name stat card. And I can't stand the way that looks, sorry. Let's add another folder name. Let's name it client. All right. So now within the folder named stat card, let's go ahead and just create a reusable component that we can use to display the 4 data points that we just created. So within the folder named stack card, let's add a file named stack card, stat-card.tsx. And we can keep this as a server component, but I am going to use the RFC template to create a quick export default function. And I'm going to name this stack card. We'll click save. And before we bring this into the page.tsx, let's go ahead and create an interface name. We can just name it props. And what we want to pass in is a title, which is going to be a string, a value, which is a number, and we'll include string, a color as a string, and description as a string. And you don't need this arrow, sorry. Get rid of that. Now, let's update this card and want to make this type safety. So we'll go react.fc and we'll go stat card and we'll go props, excuse me. And then within it, we'll pass in, within the function, excuse me, we'll pass in the value, color, description. And within the stat card, we just want to style it just a little. So within the div, we'll give it a class name, a background color of maybe slate 100. We'll give it a padding of, well, we'll go padding of 4. We'll see what that looks like. Rounded. We'll set it to large. We'll give it a little shadow, just a small shadow. Flex and set the direction, the column, make the item centered. And within that div, we'll add another div, and this will hold the value. And we'll give this div a class name with temporal literals because I want to pass in the color. So I'll say text, XL, fonts will be bold. The text color will be dynamic. So we'll pass that in and we'll make it dash, let's go 400. Okay, and under that div, we'll add another div that'll hold the description and that'll care for every, yes, there we go. And that'll care for everything that's being passed into this stack card. And we'll give it a class name of text small. And we'll set the text color to gray 500. Click save. Now we want to use these cards that we created to display the quantities, the numbers of the function that we created within the client data. So I'm gonna close out this stack card for now. Should be done with it for good. And we'll go ahead and import it. So at the top, we'll go import. And we want to import the stack card. And within the div, we'll add stack card. We'll just go ahead and close it for right now. And we know we need a title. So we'll go total clients. Then we need a value. And these values are going to come from the client data that we created. So at the top, let's go ahead and import total. What did we name this thing? client data. So we want to import client data, and it's going to come from @/lib/client. Okay. And underneath the console.log for client data, let's create a const that we need to destructure, and we'll say await client data, and be sure to call it by adding the parentheses behind it. And what we want to destructure is, I don't think I need to, yeah, okay. What we want to destructure is the total clients, total paid, I think that's with a capital, yep. Total unpaid, and then we want to go paid, I think it's paid amount. What's this last one? Unpaid. Okay. So now we want to use these destructured values from the client data within the value. And since I titled this one total clients, I'm just going to pass in total clients. And then we'll give a quick little description. And we'll just say, see your, here are your total clients. Here are your total clients. Save, and why is this giving me an error? Color. And we'll set this one to gray. Click save. Now let's go back to the local host. And you see we have a color of gray background. It is showing the total clients, and we don't have any clients entered in the database just yet. So it should show 0, and it is doing so, which is exactly what we want. So now we want to use these reusable clients to, or use these reusable cards, I should say. Give me a moment. Just need to readjust a little bit. Laptop was about to go extra low on power. Want to show the rest of the cards here on the screen. So we'll go back to, and we can copy this stat card. Total 4 times. And instead of total clients, we'll put total paid or total paid. Change this to total paid. Yep. Here's how much money you have been paid. Yep, perfect. And then we have total unpaid. Change this. What's owed? And we'll change this color to red, because it's not good. Oh, I just realized I got 2 total unpaids. How did I code that? Total paid, total unpaid, and unpaid. Wait a minute. Change that variable name. I'll change it in a second. Anyway, so we got gray. Let's make this one green. What did I do for the color here? I'm tripping. I'm gonna come back to it. Total text. It is written like that, isn't it? Yeah, that's how text color is written. I'm not going crazy. Huh. I'll need to play with that for a second because it should be a different color. Let me think. Mm, we'll go with text dash color, text dash gray. Yeah, that's it. And if we passed in the color, it should have gave a different color for the value. Let me get this going first because that's gonna drive me crazy. So go to that. This is the front page. Let's see something on this stack card. Font, text, color. Gosh, I feel like I'm going crazy. Yep, yep, yep. That looks good. That looks good. I got that. Yeah, that looks good. Check it out once we pass in some data, but it should be updating now. That's the div for value. Text is going to be, we just set the size, give it a font, make the text color. Yep. And this is the color that we passed in to it. And it's coming in as a string, which is correct. All right, I'll come back to it. For right now, though, let's make sure it's responsive, and it is. All right, great. So with that, now I want to, I think what I want to do now is work on adding a client to the tracker. I think we can just add a little bar right here where we just need to enter a name. What else are we storing? We're storing the name, status, and fee. And how do we want to do this? Let's go to the docs. So this will be, we'll create a separate page for server actions. And this will be the ability to create. So I'm going to use the server approach. And I'm also going to use Zod for server validation. So we'll go ahead and copy this. I guess we could have just typed it out too. But in the terminal, type in npm I and paste in Zod. And basically, Zod allows server-side validation. So within, close this model, name status fee. Close the model and back in the function, back in the action. Let's import Z from Zod. We'll need to bring in connect the DB, and we'll also need import client models. Okay, and within this file, this is the file that we want to use to interact with our server, validate the data, and help us update or add client information into the database. So I think the first thing we probably should do is create a schema. So I'm just going to copy this. And this is basically using the data, or this is basically using the method from Zod in order to pass in the fields, in order to validate the fields, excuse me. So I know we'll have a name and we'll say, keep the invalid type error. We'll say invalid. No, that's not right. We'll say, we'll say, what do we want to say here to validate this data? I mean, if it's a string, let's just do this. Let's do, let's remove this. And I know instead of passing in a message there, I think there's a method with Zod named .min. Yep. And we want the minimum character length to be 2. Now we'll pass in a message back to the users. Client name must be at least 2 characters long. And we'll hit save. And then we'll also need a status. This is going to be z.enum. And you probably don't need this, but this will just make it a little easier, I suppose. And the two statuses are paid, or the statuses are paid and unpaid. And then we want the default to be unpaid. UNPID, UNPID, okay. And then last but not least, let's include the fee. And this is going to be a number. We want the min number to be 0. And then we'll just say fee must be a positive number. We'll click save. And then now within the asynchronous function, we know we need to pass in form and form data. So we'll just go. And I also think we need to pass the previous state. Previous state. It's going to be any. Ooh, not audio. Any. There we go. So according to the docs, we'll then need to, it talked about form objects somewhere. Where was it? Where is it? What is this? Here we go. Here we go. Entries, form entry, form data. Then we just need to, okay. So then we need to create a const. I'm gonna name it form object and set it equal to object dot form entries dot form entries, and we want to get the form data dot entries, form data dot entries. Yep. And we'll need to also convert the fee to a number, or just make sure that it is a number, I should say. So we'll say const fee is equal to number, and we'll say form object dot fee. And then here's where Zod will come in, and we'll say const, and we'll say validated fields, right? Where is it? Okay. It like it's taking a slightly different approach, but that's okay. We're gonna go with const and just name this validated fields. And what we want is the schema. So we'll just say, we'll name this, this probably should be named client schema. Say const validated fields. And what we want to do is use the client schema to basically validate the data that we're getting. Go form object and the fee. And next up, we'll want to care for any errors that we may get. So we'll say if no validated fields, if it's not success, then we basically just want to return the error. Validated fields dot error dot flatten dot field errors. Save. And if it is success, then we want to destructure it, and we'll just set it equal to validated fields dot data. It helps if you have an equal mark there. Then we'll want to grab the status, name, and fee, right? Fee, status, name, yep. And let me think about this for a second. Do we need to pass in the fee? No, because we went ahead and parsed the fee, so we don't need to grab it from the data because we already we basically separated it out. So that's fine. That's why we got type safety or TypeScript to kind of help us with some of the validation logic. So now if everything goes if everything goes well, we want to establish the connection to the database. So we'll go await DB and be sure to call it. We'll add a try catch block. Of course, within the try, we'll go const new client is equal to await client dot And we're going to use the mongoose method of create. And we want to create a status, a name, and fee. Okay, no errors. It's good. And in this instance, we're not going to actually return it. But we will do console. And I'm going to show you, we're going to do something else. We're going to run this on the server. Console.log error. And then we'll go throw new error. No, we won't, because we're using Zod. We want to use return error, failed to add client. And then we'll go with revalidate path. And this is if we wanted to redirect the user to a different page, but I don't think I'm going to redirect them. I think we'll just go revalidate, and that should be imported from Nextjs. All right, yeah, this is cool. And yeah, this will work. All right, so let's just go ahead and click save. And then what I want to do next is add the ability to actually create a client that we can store within the database. And I'm thinking, do I want to do this on a separate page, or do I just want to keep it on this? We'll go it right here. So we already have the user form. Then we want to and we'll need to bring in the action, of course. So we'll go import or create. And be sure to import it from @/lib/actions. And we'll need to set an initial state. And name, it's going to be a string. The status is unpaid. I'll just copy that. And fee is 0. Yeah. Okay. Inside of it, state form action, and we just need to update the our action. So we'll go inside the client form instead of create user. I think it is just create. Yep. Okay. I'm gonna create a form. Let's see. Well, error, but